For the puzzle of alliances presentation, our group will be analyzing the complexity of state alliances and commitments and attempt to provide a solution for it as well. We will be addressing this by answering the three provided questions and summarizing the points from the lectures and coming up with ideas on how to alleviate and solve the issues. To start off with part one, the question asks, why is it puzzling that states government publicly sign a treaty when they enter a defensive alliance? To begin with, alliances are treaties that compel states to take on certain courses of action in the chance of war. They are ultimately a step up of an alignment in is formal in that is based on things that are written down and the degree of shared interest between the two parties are specifically denoted. They are made for the purpose of bolstering security and creating a mutual defense framework among the participating states. However, the public announcement of alliances sometimes leads to concerns, and this is where it starts to become puzzling between the parties that are involved. By openly revealing and signing an actual contract denoting one's commitment to each other, signing treaties makes everything public, and this might just give more information to potential adversaries. It can be possibly build trust or commitment on one hand, but also be a deterrent strategy and rather dissuade potential adversaries from starting conflict with one another. Furthermore, this is also the alliance security dilemma, which divides into abandonment and entrapment. For abandonment, it is when a state's ally refuses to come to its aid in a crisis. This happens when a state acts aggressively and refuses to make concessions in a crisis or even initiate a crisis in itself. For entrapment, it is the situation in which a state becomes overly reliant on its allies for its security. Okay. So, in the first part of our discussion, we delve into the puzzling question of why states publicly sign defensive alliance treaties. Now, let's unravel the possible solutions to this puzzle. From the deterrence aspect, we come to the costly signaling explanation. The main idea is that the alliances serves as potential instrument for signaling general deterrence. The formation of alliances sends a message to the international community, showing their common interests and enhanced ability to engage in military conflict. And perhaps most significantly, the higher substantial costs associated with challenging these allied states. But why do states resort to such signaling through publicly signed treaties? The answer is to address credibility problem in extended deterrence. Although the deterrence and signal we send, inherent uncertainty lies in the willingness and capabilities of allies to intervene when the need arises. In essence, alliances become credible signals of a state's commitment to intervene because the cost associated with these commitments acts as filter, deterring less resolute actors from engaging in alliances merely for symbolic purposes. Let's break down this cost into key components. Firstly, we have military coordination costs. The complexity of aligning military strategies and operation with allies impose expenses on states. Secondly, political costs in foreign military bases, including diplomatic challenges and domestic scrutiny. Another important part is called audience costs, which comes into two dimensions. Empty commitment could tarnish a country's reputation globally. Voters and political opponents might seek to reprimand a president for breaking the alliance. Okay, now let's briefly touch upon some alternative explanation. Neorealism offers insights into how states may use alliances to demonstrate leadership in the international community. By attracting other countries under their leadership in alliances, states can consolidate their influence. The balance of power suggests that the states sign alliance treaties to prevent any single country or group from gaining excessive power in the international system. contributing to the overall stability of the world order. Additionally, there are domestic and diplomatic benefits other than defending. International political needs require governments demonstrating diplomatic success and providing national security assurances through alliances, enhancing their approval rates. The rise of the international reputation can bring more cooperation opportunities while reducing the willingness of potential adversaries to confront each other, not only in military, but also in broader international relations. Okay, moving on now to the final part of the presentation, we try to answer the question, to what extent is the costly signaling theory valid? We address this question and another potential alternative Albert condition solution as well. We propose that the validity of the costly signaling explanation depends on how symmetric or asymmetric the alliance is. In order to justify how the costly signaling models works for symmetric alliances, we focus on the cost of potential defection that are baked into the overall cost of alliance. When joining alliance, it comes with the cost of understanding that leaving the alliance could result in political, audience, and reputational costs. Let's take a hypothetical situation with two powers, State A and State B, who have similar levels of power in terms of defense. Let's say that the blue and the yellow portions in total make up the overall power they have, while the yellow portion shows the power they could lose as a result of defecting and taking on the cost of leaving the alliance. Okay. If State A choose to defect and leave the alliances, for instance, State A loses power and State B immediately becomes stronger. This leaves State A vulnerable to an attack from their former ally, State B. Of course, State A would not want to be at risk of getting attacked by their former ally though. Hence, State A does not defect and stays in alliance. The fact that the State A is willing to put themselves in a situation where they cannot rationally leave the alliance means that joining alliance is a credible signal of supporting their ally. Hence, the costly signaling model can help explain why symmetric alliances form. This logic, though, does not work for asymmetric alliances. Taking this potential situation where a stronger State B takes on the cost of defection and does defect, State B still remains significantly stronger than State A. In this case, State B joining an alliance with State A is not credible from the perspective of the costly signaling models, as a rational State B would still defect despite the cost. This raises the questions, how can we explain asymmetric alliances? In order to explain asymmetric alliances, we need to come up with a new theory that doesn't purely rely on the concept of militaristic defense. Looking at the incentives for the weaker states, they primarily would want security, and the stronger state would want policy and ideological control of other countries. For the weaker states, security allows them to be less vulnerable to the attacks, while for the stronger state, we assume that they want to extend their power by getting other countries to adopt policies and ideologies which favor the stronger state. We make this assumption in order to justify asymmetric alliances for the model that we present. Sustainability of this model can be achieved as long as both states fulfill the other needs. States B fulfilling States A need for security, and States A conceding policy control to States B in order to fulfill States B needs for power. The alliance between Japan and US can be justified under this framework too. Japan is significantly weaker than the US and can offer little to the US in terms of defense protection. So what incentives would the US have to join this alliance? Well, they understand that by supporting Japan in terms of their defense, Japan in turn will support the US through many of their policies and ideologies. For instance, the US had Japan's full support during the Cold War, during a time where the US and the Soviet Unions were going head to head to try and get more countries on their side. So as long as we assume that a weaker state A needs protection and the stronger state B wants to exercise more overseas control over policy and ideology, asymmetric alliances can be rationally justified through the model that we presented. To conclude the points we made in part 3, we argue that the costly signaling models can justify symmetric alliances, but cannot justify asymmetric alliances. To justify asymmetric alliances, we need to consider the differentiations of interests and come up with a model that suits the interests of all parties involved. And that concludes our presentation. Thank you so much for listening.